Let's get more on how the president's message will sit with leaders, voters, the military community, people in the energy world. We bring back Matt Schlapp, who's been standing by and watching it all the way through. He's a principal at Cove Strategies, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Rob Taub is a political analyst and journalist. We have 30-year Army veteran and Fox News military analyst, Major General Bob Scales. But right off the bat, I want to begin with Rob. Rob, you're on the Democratic side. How did you feel about the tone that he took?
I was wildly disappointed with it. I thought he had an opportunity for a seminal moment here, and he came across as flat and dispassionate, drab as dishwater. I've seen people read laundry lists with more excitement. I'm stunned.
Matt Schlapp, and that's Rob, and Rob tends to be on the center-left side here. What do you think?
You know, it might not surprise you that I wasn't wildly optimistic and happy with his remarks either. Perhaps it was a little drab because he had to actually speak extemporaneously, which he doesn't usually do. But look, I think this is a very anticlimactic presidency. What the president wants to focus on is things like climate. But what the world is actually focusing on is the threat of ISIS and the fact that America's economy is awfully wobbly. And these are not areas that Obama has great policy solutions for.
Let's get to the ISIS issue, General. As we look at what happens in the next couple of weeks, we know a couple of things. We know that Russia and the U.S. are starting to warm up to working together. Right. We know what the president said about Assad, who, of course, runs Syria at the moment. But at what point do we start to see real success on the battlefield when we don't have thousands and thousands of boots on the ground?
You're not going to see it, Liz. I was deeply disappointed with his disingenuous description of the conditions on the battlefield, what we soldiers call ground truth. His rosy depiction of being able to defeat ISIS just isn't true. I haven't talked to a single member of the uniformed military who agrees with anything he said. And what I think upsets me more than anything else, Liz, is the fact that he made a statement, just very briefly, that my military advisors support this approach. I have to tell you, Liz, I know those military advisors, and they believe ISIS is ascendant. They believe that we're falling behind in our war against terrorism.
Major General, if they have their wish list, since you have their ear, if they had their wish list, what would it look like on the ground right now in Syria?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you settle on a center of gravity to defeat ISIS. That's the city of Raqqa. You amp the air campaign up from just airstrikes to an air campaign, and then eventually, sometime in the future when the U.S. is able to build a Sunni coalition, we go in on the ground with a carefully targeted, a razor-like strike at the city of Raqqa and collapse ISIS from the inside out, Liz.
All right, let's go back to the budget issue, Rob. It appears to be passed. It's a doozy, $1.1 trillion. It's a lot of money. It appears, though, that both sides get a little bit of something, but this expiring of the ban on oil exports now moves forward. This is something we haven't seen in 40 years, 4 entire decades. Who's happiest about this? You've got the oil companies probably jumping for joy, but we still see oil tanking right now, even with a very clear horizon on exporting all of this oil that we have.
So where are we going with this? We're going to blame this on Obama?
Well, you can't now. He's agreed to it. And we've had more pumping and more extraction than we have in a long time. Some of that would be because the states push for it. But now what? What are you going to complain about? How come oil prices, who are you going to blame that on?
Well, as oil prices go down, we're going to see something happen, maybe perhaps with natural gas now. I mean, that's not my bailiwick and area of expertise. What I just want to see more with the president is bipartisanship. I was disappointed with his discussion of the budget, talking about complaining, well, we did some things that I liked, but a lot of things that I was against. He's got to bring the country together in his last year if he wants to leave any kind of important positive legacy. And
now,
I just don't see him doing that.
What about that? Who should he reach out to first? He had said that he's getting along now with Speaker Ryan.
Right.
But I was talking to some people right after Speaker Ryan had accepted the position, and they said the first thing that he really should do, meaning President Obama, is invite Speaker Ryan and his girls and his wife to the White House for dinner. I'm not sure that hasn't happened, but we sure have not heard about it. It's a small thing, but it makes the country feel better about bipartisanship, does it not?
Absolutely. And, you know, Barack Obama's problem with Congress is not a problem with Republicans. This is something that's not very well understood. He has big problems with Democrats, too. Nancy Pelosi complains more about Barack Obama than she complains about anybody. The fact is this: Barack Obama is not LBJ. He's not a president who has a natural kind of touch to the other people who he has to deal with. He doesn't build these types of coalitions. It's one of the reasons why he's such a bad diplomat.
You know what,
He's
Rob,
actually...
Did you guys know Rob's father worked with LBJ? Is that correct?
He worked in the White House primarily with Hubert Humphrey.
How different is the tone?
It's completely different because Obama enjoys the accoutrements of the presidency, like planes and trips and power, but he doesn't like the daily machinations of what it takes to be president. LBJ had a working dinner every single night in the White House. Obama abhors that.
And of course, I'm sure the military leaders, General, were very much a part of that. In the end, we still have nearly a year plus of President Obama's term. What's the #1 thing he should be doing when it comes to those generals at the Pentagon that you hear from all the time?
Well, I think what he has to do is develop a plan B. Doesn't have to be executed during his watch, and unless ISIS does something egregious against the homeland, it won't be. But you can't start a renewal of the campaign against ISIS from a cold start. We have 13 months of time where ISIS can consolidate their gains. So we have to begin now to develop a plan B, put conditions in place so ISIS simply doesn't grow completely off the scale, Liz.
Major General Bob Scales, Matt Schlapp, Rob Taub. Matt's been sitting in the chair for hours waiting and listening, so thank you all. We really appreciate it. Have a good holiday.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Liz.